we will go ahead and get started. Just so we know that everyone's in the right place, this is our sabbatical flex presentation, the ABCs of sabbaticals, what to know and how to apply. And Mun and I will be the co-host for today. I'm Anastasia Panagakos. I'm in anthropology, and Mun Kang is over in RTVF, and we also are the co-chairs of professional standards. So we will be facilitating this presentation today. It is being recorded for those of you who maybe don't want your screen on, I suppose, but anyways, there it is. Mun, do you want to go to the second slide?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. So we'll do a couple of things. In addition to this welcome, we will have our land acknowledgement and maybe some introductions, and then and then the agenda is basically we'll be talking about what sabbaticals are, the application process, and then there will be time for some discussion and also some folks who will be able to tell us a little bit more about the process. So we do have some folks here who are from the Professional Standards Committee, and then also folks who've had sabbaticals. So we want this to be a little bit more on the casual side. We do have some nuts and bolts to get through, but we think that there's a lot of value in having the conversation about this topic as well. So again, welcome everyone. We're really glad that you could join us this morning, and we hope that we're able to answer your questions about sabbaticals and then also give you a good overview of what sabbaticals actually are. Before we get to all that though, I do want to do our land acknowledgement, and that is of course acknowledging that we are on the traditional homeland of the Miwok and Nisenan peoples. And we know that these indigenous folks have been here for a very long time and continue to occupy this land, and that we want to be sure that we are respectful and also reminding ourselves about their presence here and the what they have contributed to both our college and then also to the area in general. So just wanted to be sure we do that. Mun, would you like to add anything for introductions? If you would like to introduce yourself and maybe perhaps identify the committee members also from professional standards who are here.
Sure. So Mun Kang from RTVF, Radio, TV, Film, also co-chair in the Professional Standards Committee. We also have, let me go back, or we could leave it here. So we also have a couple members from the Professional Standards Committee. We have Patty Faulkner and I think Lisa Marie might be joining us today. And then we also have two guest speakers that have been previous recipients. We have Catherine Mayo and Leslie Gale. They will be sharing about their experience. Yeah, anyways, let's hop right in. Have you guys ever felt like this during the semester or the year? Just tired, zero energy, you're on low battery, you need a refresher? Or do you ever feel burned out? Maybe those that have been here for quite some time teaching, you know. And so I know some people teach overload every semester or summer session as well. So we have a solution. If you feel tired and burned out, you have burnout, which goes this way, and you have sabbatical, which goes that way. So sabbatical is a solution for burnout. So this is what a sabbatical can do for you. It can give you motivation, life goals, work-life balance. You could also, learn new skills. Okay, this is what we want. We want to feel refreshed, feel new, rejuvenated, kind of feel like we're floating on clouds or top of a mountain. We want to feel new again. Okay, so here's some of the benefits of a sabbatical. You can complete a professional project, rework, recalibrate your work-life balance, collaborate with other cultures. You could immerse yourself in another country, explore another country. You could dedicate yourself to a passion project. You could improve your spiritual, mental, physical, emotional health and well-being. You can feel rejuvenated and inspired, and then you can also have a renewed passion for teaching. So these are a lot of things that a sabbatical can do for you. Very beneficial. And here's some quotes we have. This is from Lisa Lewis. Taking a sabbatical is not only one of the most empowering things you can do for your life, it's also one of the most important strategic ways to professionally advance. So you could professionally advance by working on projects that deal with that you've always wanted to work on, passion projects that are in your field, and you can advance in your field doing those. Here's a sabbatical project. It's dedicated time off from your work to reset, recover, and pursue a creative or learning purpose. Take time to feel alive. So when people take sabbaticals, it makes them feel like a new passion for their craft and also for teaching as well. And they're excited to, tell their students about, the project and everything. And then we have a quote from a Princeton professor that took a sabbatical. This is what the professor says. Nigel Smith, Princeton University. It was so fortunate to find somewhere that really resonated with my project. I would also say that you must greatly respect the place in which you stay and your host. So that could be literal and also figurative. So he could be talking about a location he went to, or he could be talking about resonating within himself. So taking a sabbatical, you can, find yourself if you need to. And then Anastasia is back to Anastasia. She's going to talk about the purpose of a sabbatical.
Thanks, Man. And thank you for that. I think it's interesting because when we think about sabbaticals, there's the nuts and bolts, which is the kind of tedious stuff, which I'm going to get to. But I like that you started off with kind of the bigger picture of things, right? That like what we're really doing when we're going for a sabbatical, it's not just creating a project, but it's also thinking about ourselves holistically as professors, as colleagues, as human beings. And I know that there have been many sabbaticals that folks have taken that have been really good at combining these things. And I just want to acknowledge too, Georgine is also here who has taken sabbaticals. And I'm glad you could join us this morning. I know you weren't sure if you were going to be able to, so I'm glad you're here as well. And there really is something to finding a project that you're passionate about, and also that's going to enable you to do something different outside of the usual grind. And I think right now many of us are feeling that the grind of teaching, of making continuous adjustments with the various COVID variants and trying to teach online and go back and forth has given many of us pause, I think, to change how we're doing things and that sort of thing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts, and all of this, also keep in mind, can be found on the website. So on CRC's website, which I do have a slide for that just to show you where to find the professional standards page, but we'll go from there. So for us at community colleges, we are not guaranteed sabbatical. I know that was one thing that I found interesting when I came from a UC, which was at a UC. As with many four-year colleges, you accrue sabbatical over time. We don't accrue sabbatical. This is something that we have to apply for, and it's not necessarily guaranteed. And so I think that's always good for us to just remember. I know coming from different systems, sometimes we're not aware of this. So this really is just a release from our regular duties, and it allows us to engage in projects or studies that may be beneficial to ourselves and also our students, right? And falls outside of regular responsibilities, which is also something that we can talk about. It's a little bit of a gray area there. You can go to the next slide. And so there are different types of sabbaticals. These are the three most common ones that people know about. And the ones that our committee deal with, of course, is a type A or a type B. Type C, I will talk a little bit about as well, but mostly type A and type B. And so when we describe a type A sabbatical, we're basically talking about when a professor takes off an entire semester, or it can also be done for an entire year at half pay. Traditionally, most of the time, folks want the semester off. And this includes taking off all college service, like you basically check out for the year, or I'm sorry, not for the year, for the semester. And so you're being paid your salary and your benefits, and you're basically off the clock for any duties, including college service. A type B sabbatical can be for up to 100%, although in many instances, folks usually are asking for anywhere between, it seems standard, maybe 20% to 60% seems about the usual. And so this would be like asking for maybe 1 to 3 classes off in order to do a project, but then you're still teaching the rest of your load and you still have to do college service. In both these instances, you do have to be a tenured faculty member. For a type B sabbatical, though, it is, or you have to be tenure track. For type A, you have to be tenured already. For type B, you have to put in 3 years of service. So there's always a little bit of fine tuning that goes on with these. The last type of sabbatical that we'll talk about today is the type C. And this is different. This is where faculty can bank their overload. So this is if you're teaching over 100%, you can bank the time of your overload classes and get paid out for that at a later time when you decide to take a sabbatical. It does not follow the application process for types A and B, and it can also be used to supplement parental leave, which is good to know. Okay, next slide. So these are just some of the criteria. And again, these are all found on the website. And so this is just to kind of give you an overview of what types of things are typically considered for sabbaticals. So it could be anything from upgrading a skill set or certain kinds of knowledge that you might need or have for current or future assignments. Improving curriculum and educational delivery systems, et cetera, that are outside of regular duties, right? So this isn't meant to be something where we all have to do curriculum update in general as part of our job. So this has to be something above and beyond what you would normally do. That also includes things like development or revision of certificate or degree programs. We all do a little bit of that along the way, but this is like a big picture item. So I can give you an example. This past year, we had a sabbatical, and Michael Frem did a sabbatical for culinary arts. And he was awarded the sabbatical to completely revamp the culinary arts program. So and he's a department of one. So it was deemed a lot of work for him to have to do that. And so this was above and beyond regular duty stuff. Of course, looking at enhancement of student success and access. So this is, again, looking at ways to improve the experience for students, to improve success that goes above and beyond what we normally do. And then one we don't see too often is the retraining of applicants for future assignments. So if something has really changed in your field, that is something that is considered. So for example, also in the past, I guess now it's probably a couple of years, Marcus Geisler over in computer information systems technology had a sabbatical to get up to speed on changes in his field that were way above and beyond what would be considered part of his normal duties. So this is usually the kinds of criteria. Okay, next slide, Mun. This is just our homepage. I was like, okay, like folks need to know where to find us. As you know, we've had this revamped website for some time now. And when you go to the employee section of our webpage, you can find us under governance, and then academic senate, subcommittees, and then professional standards. And I just wanted to put that up there so that everyone knows where to find our stuff. And on that homepage is where you will find the applications. You'll find some examples of type A and type B sabbaticals, and also reports. If you know how to get to board docs, I don't know how many of you are familiar with board docs. You can, if you go to board docs, you can see our most recent meeting minutes, notes, and also the reports for the last few years are also listed in those meeting minutes. It's just become, we're still trying to figure out where the best places to put that information. So if you're looking for something specific though, a specific sabbatical or report, you can always contact us. Okay, next page. Oh, would you mind, there's actually in the chat, just a moment. and how to get to board docs. Yeah, sorry, just looking at that now. Would you mind showing us quickly how to get to board docs? The quickest way to get to board docs is actually through the Academic Senate page. And if you're on Academic Senate's page, there's a part that says meeting minutes. It's at the very bottom. It's really hidden. And we're going to link that, by the way, to our page. We just haven't done it yet. There's a place that says meeting minutes. If you click on that, it'll take you to board docs. It's super hidden. And we recognize that. We're still working on it. So we can, if we have time, we can come back and show you where to find that. So application procedures, and this is outlined on the website, and mostly, of course, you have to have a well-developed project. So the outline of the project, it's exactly like you would think about when you're applying for like a grant, description of the activities, the budget and resources, also the allotment of time. So how are you going to be spending your time doing this work during the sabbatical? They want to know the appropriate method of evaluation. So how are you going to evaluate the success of this project, or what implications it'll have for your work or for the college, excuse me, or for our students. There is also a signed sabbatical leave agreement. So you do have to talk to your dean when you are applying for sabbatical. There is a place for them. They don't approve, the deans are not, they can't tell you whether or not to take a sabbatical, but we do want them to know that you are applying for one, right? So we want to be sure there's open communication between everyone who's on board. Okay, next slide, Mun. So the way the process works then is once you turn in an application, the Professional Standards Committee will meet, we will conduct interviews, and then our recommendations are sent to the college president, who then makes the recommendations to the chancellor, who then passes them on to the board of trustees. So there's this entire process with how the chain of command works. And what the applications are evaluated on, and this is probably one of the most important things for folks, is of course the potential benefit to students, programs, the institution, and certainly the faculty member, right? And so these are not done in equal proportion. In some instances, a sabbatical may really be something that benefits students first. In others, it may be something that is going to benefit the professional growth of the faculty member. There's lots of different ways for this to look. And then, of course, something that is considered is the high level of the applicant's performance of duties. So what is the candidate been doing otherwise? And if they're applying for sabbatical, what have they been doing in terms of college service? What have they been doing in terms of their work just in general? And so we do ask for a self-study, and we do take a look at that just to have an overview of what faculty have been doing that are applying for sabbaticals. Okay, then you can go to the next slide. Okay, so just a word about those type Cs, and also I know I'm going through this a little bit quickly, but that's also because I want to be sure we have lots of room for questions, because I think that it's clear in my mind, and as it is probably in Mun's, but we want to be sure that folks have time to ask questions so that we can go back and clarify. Okay, so what about those type C sabbaticals? Now, I will say that when I got hired at CRC, no one told me about type C sabbaticals. I probably worked at the college for 5 years before I even knew what they were. And so that to me, I really wish I had known ahead of time, because I think that would have helped me think a little bit more about my plans for the future and how I wanted to spend my time, or if I was teaching overload, what I wanted to do with that overload. So remember that type Cs are when you teach overload and you can bank, instead of getting paid that semester for that class, money for that class is basically banked, and you can take it as a lump, not as a lump sum, but you can take it over the course of a semester as a type C sabbatical. And so the way that this works is basically, it's actually quite simple. There is a form that you have to have signed by your dean that goes up the chain of command to the vice president of instruction, that gets approved, and then that gets sent on to HR. And that is basically, it's a very simple process. You have to identify which class you want earmarked for overload and also to be banked. There is some lingo that I wasn't even aware of until I started to look into this myself, which is that in order to take a full leave, of one semester, you do need what's called 15 equivalent formula hours. And this is where it gets a little squishy, because it kind of depends on how many students you're teaching, how much FTE you're setting aside. But basically, to keep it sort of simple, one class is about equivalent to 2.25 equivalent formula hours. And so you need to bank approximately 6 to 7 classes for a full semester of leave. Now, again, that's squishy because it's going to be a little bit different for everyone, depending on some factors and some creative math. The thing is, though, you really do have to be diligent. So the form is easy, but it is totally up to you as the faculty member to be sure that this gets through. And the reason I say that is because I've actually, I tried to bank one semester a couple of years ago, pre-COVID, and the paperwork never was filed properly. And I only found out much later that the overload did not get banked. I got paid for it, but it did not. I got paid for it during that semester, but I did not get it banked. So you have to be super diligent. And there is no easy way to find out if your overload is being banked. When I looked into the process, I had to contact HR a couple of times before I got to the right person, who then was able to tell me how much I had banked. And it's not in e-services. I tried to go through employment. I tried to go through employment services and look through. I tried to look through my pay stubs. There's nothing there. So it's kind of a little bit of a black hole. So you have to be very diligent with that. Summer classes can also be banked as overload for type C, since we are all considered adjunct faculty if we teach in summer. So that's another way if you're thinking about doing something like this for future planning, that's something to do. And there's a question in the chat. How many units is one class here? Oh, okay. So in this case, I'm doing this based on my classes. And so these are 3-unit classes. So that's true. Our classes do have 3, 4, 5 units. This is 3-unit classes. And so that's a really good question because, again, the contract is not there's not a lot of information in the contract. If you are pursuing a type C, I really stress the word pursue, because you do have to pursue it yourself and get all the information yourself. No one is handing it to us. Let's put it like that. Now, the good thing is, though, just to be on the positive side, the nice thing or interesting thing, of course, about type Cs is there is no application process. You do not have to do a project. This is that you are responsible for to the college. This is money that you have banked. You take a semester off, and then you do with it whatever you will. You have no obligation to produce anything. So that's a different. You've already put in the work, right? You've done overload. Okay, I will stop there on type Cs because I'm sure there may be more questions. And thank you, Teresa, for that too. Some music classes are 2 units and PE has 1 and 1.5 unit classes. So yeah, exactly. It's just something that you kind of have to figure out, and HR might be helpful or they might not. That depends. I'll stop there. Mun, go ahead. Next slide. I think you're up next.
Sorry, I was on mute. Okay, this is the checklist, a complete checklist. You have to complete the Los Rios sabbatical leave application form. This includes the application form, a narrative of the project, plan of the evaluation, and a plan for sharing results. Step 2, you have to complete the CRC supplemental form for type A and B sabbaticals. This includes application form, explanation of requested leave time, attached copy of most recent self-study. And then we have step 3, submit completed application forms to the Professional Standards Committee chair in both hard copy and electronic form by the due date. So the dean has to sign the Los Rios sabbatical leave application form, and then you must inform your chair and department about the proposal and sign the supplemental form. Oops, went back. Oops, sorry. I gotta go backwards. Let me stop share. Let me share again. Sorry about that, everybody. Um, oh, here we go, checklist. Okay, step 4, interviews will be conducted on Friday afternoons of week 5 or week 6 of the semester. Okay, here's the timeline. Week 1, call for a sabbatical. This is in the semester. Call for sabbatical applications sent by Professional Standards Committee through email. Week 4, applications due. Interviews are held week 5 and 6 on Friday afternoons. Weeks 8 through 10, applicants informed by decision by college president. And then weeks 10 through 16, successful applicants inform department chair and dean prepare for sabbatical leave. So that's the application timeline. Okay, reports and follow-up. So after you complete your sabbatical, a report is submitted within 3 months after returning to regular duties and teaching. And then committee reviews, reports, recommends approval or disapproval to the college president. And then upon approval, the college president report is transmitted to the chancellor. And then the recipient's report will include methods for sharing the results of the studies, projects or activities with colleagues, the college, the community, and wherever appropriate. So this is the follow-up after you complete the sabbatical. Okay, next we have a couple of the Professional Standards Committee members. We have Patty Faulkner with us and Lisa Marie Medeiros, if you'd like to share some perspectives on sabbaticals and the application process.
I'll defer to Patty first because she's amazing.
Go ahead, feel free to share.
Okay, thanks. Well, it's the kind of thing that, you know, I feel like it most resembles sort of a hiring committee. I've always felt that way, that, you know, it depends so much on how much time the committee has to consider giving away for a particular semester. Sometimes, you know, when we go into it, you know, CRC gets 2 type A's every academic year and a certain amount of leave for type B. And so you've got this finite jar of time to give. And then it really just is about, you know, the strength of your proposal, but also who else is in the room and who else is in the competitive process. So for me, I always feel like it's almost like an interview where, you know, you might, the committee might be very much in support of your proposal, but if there's not enough time to give, then there's kind of in a ranking situation where, you know, yes, we want to support this proposal, but there were, you know, 4 other proposals that we also wanted to support, and we had to rank those. So for a lot of people, that's very confusing to hear yes and no at the same time. And I've always said, go back and you know, reapply, because if the committee has supported it once, then they're likely to support it again in a semester where they don't have enough time. I mean, that's one big piece of it. And then the second part is, a lot of times we have more time to give than we have applicants. And so it's very confusing. It's like it rains a lot or it doesn't rain at all. And I feel like, you know, people always need to be in a situation where they just keep coming back and keep coming back. If you have something you want to do, the committee is eventually going to have the time to grant that to you. And I think that's really, really important. And then my second thing is just that if you're really feeling like you want to apply and be successful, it is a great idea to talk to the chair, just to make a little, you know, Zoom meeting or whatever, and run by your proposal and say, hey, this is something I want to do. How do you think I can best approach this? And then of course, doing your homework and reading other proposals. But I think that hearing from the chair and sort of, having the chair kind of have an idea of what you're intending and kind of responding to it, a pathway of getting there, I think is crucial. So I would really recommend those things. Just keep hitting it over and over again, and then talking to the chair before you even submit an application.
Thanks, Patty, for the insight. Super helpful. Lisa, did you want to add anything?
Sure. Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm glad I was able to finally join. I was having technical difficulties. So I started serving on our sabbatical or professional standards committee at a very early time in my career at CRC. And I want to, openly thank Anastasia for recommending that I participate, because I've learned so much. It was very intimidating in the beginning. I would, to be honest, and having gone through this, serving on this committee for a couple of years, it's been an amazing experience. So I'm also kind of plugging in serving on our committee, right? But I would say, if the nuts and bolts of it, make sure your application is complete. You'd be surprised how many times we've received incomplete applications and we can't accept them. We can't move them forward. And if I could just talk a little bit about personally, I mean, I think every time somebody comes into the room, we really want them to succeed. We really, really want to find a way to support the project and approve the time that they requested. So the more you can make it make sense on paper, the easier it is for us to make that decision. If there are a lot of questions or kind of holes in your application, it makes it very hard, because we can only ask so many questions before we start feeling like we're kind of guiding you through it versus just approving the application, if that makes sense. I would say also, if our chair is open to reviewing your application beforehand, that is 100% a bonus, because you get another person's perspective and set of eyes on it. Who knows what we're going to look at when we're reviewing the application. I know the process in itself can be like intimidating, because there's like a lot of forms, and I've even thought about applying for a sabbatical, and then I look at some of these stellar applications and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need a sabbatical just to apply for a sabbatical. And we joke about that, but honestly, we've seen it happen. If you choose a project you're truly passionate about, you do your homework, you do the paperwork. It really is something that'll come really naturally when you decide to apply. So yeah, that's about it.
Thanks, Lisa Marie, for your perspective and insight. I know it's going to be really helpful for future applicants. Now we will move on to our special guest speakers we have for today. We have Professor Leslie Gale, Professor of English, and we have Catherine Mayle, Professor of Photography. They have been previous sabbatical recipients. So I would, feel free to. I would love to introduce Leslie Gale and Catherine Mayle, and you can go ahead and share about your experience with the sabbatical, and then just feel free to share whatever you'd like about your experience with the sabbatical before, during, after, all that.
Do you want us to kind of speak in tandem, or one of us speaks and the other?
How about Leslie Gale can start, and then Catherine can go next?
Okay, so I just want to acknowledge some of the things that have already been said. It is intimidating to both complete the application process and be in the interviews, but it is worth it. And I also want to acknowledge that serving on the Professional Standards Committee is an incredible experience. I think I was on it for about 5 years when I was recently hired. And I learned so much about the types of things that are happening on campus, got to know people outside of my own area. So I highly recommend that as well. And it's really helpful when you decide you want to apply if you have been on the committee. I've had a number of Type B sabbaticals throughout my 21-year career at CRC. But in the spring of 2017, I decided to apply for a Type A sabbatical. And I knew that the Type A sabbatical would be a significant amount of time, both preparing to apply. Basically, you are working on your sabbatical the same number of hours that you would be working if you were teaching a full load. And also the reporting process afterwards does take a significant amount of time. But it is, that is also a remarkable experience because you have a document that describes and acknowledges all of the hard work that you do. I think it's really important that if you decide to apply for a Type A sabbatical, you kind of have a feeling that this is something that you are really ready to invest yourself in, and that you're going to be full on into this project, because you are responsible for keeping track of the amount of time that you spend and being really quite detailed about the types of things that you do. But it should be something that you're passionate about. And so I'll just tell you a little bit about what my Type A sabbatical was. Throughout my career at CRC, I've had a number of students who were immigrants, refugees from a variety of places. And in particular, I from working in the Reading and Writing Center, I would be helping students. One example really stands out to me. A student, a female student from Afghanistan, and I was helping her with a paper. And you learn a lot about students when you read their writing. And I was able to see that in Afghanistan, she was a pediatrician. And at CRC, her goal was to be a preschool teacher. And that is a worthy goal. But it made me think about all of the education and training experience that she went through in her home country that was not recognized here in the United States. And it made me wonder why. Why is it that way? Is there something that can be done about that? I was very aware around 2015 about the surge of refugees from Syria across the world, and how I started wondering, how are these other places bringing these refugees in, and particularly how are they helping them to be able to use their prior education experience to be able to continue the careers that they have spent so much time training for and that they had a passion for. And so that was the sort of the burning question for me that I wanted to research. I was able to spend a few months in Europe and visiting institutions of higher education in Europe, and speaking specifically to faculty, staff, and administrators who were involved in initiatives specifically to help refugees be able to do what they want to do and to be able to, in their new homes, use their training, skills, education. A lot of them were in medicine, a lot of them were in engineering. And so I was able to interview a lot of people, visit sites. I was able to even go on a field trip when I was in Norway. And I made sure that I was taking prolific notes. And one of the ways that I did that was by keeping a blog. That's really important for any sabbatical, that as you are doing your activities that you propose to do, that you're really documenting your time and your experiences. I was also able to volunteer for a few months with International Rescue Committee, and that was an incredible experience for me. I worked in refugee resettlement. I was able to make connections in the Sacramento area, and I am still considered an occasional volunteer, which is being able to do a few things on weekends. And more recently, you may know we have an area in Sacramento, Art and Arcade area, where whole apartment buildings are Afghan families. I've become aware, because of housing shortages, that more and more of the Afghan refugees now are being resettled in the Elk Grove area, South Sacramento and Elk Grove. And so I'm on a Sacramento Refugee Helps WhatsApp group. And so I've been able to continue reaching out and helping out where I can. And the reason I'm talking about what I did after my sabbatical is that that sabbatical really changed my life, and gave me the opportunity to make this become part of the network of serving. I think back to the time that I was volunteering for IRC, the time that I was traveling around Europe and meeting these incredible educators as well as refugees. And it was one of the happiest, most magical times of my life. So I hope that you're finding that inspiring. And if you are thinking of applying for a Type A sabbatical, please feel free to reach out to me for more insights and information. I want to make sure that Catherine has some time.
Excuse me. Thank you, Leslie. It was really inspiring listening to you talk about your project. What I wanted to say was that, both Leslie and my projects have an element of travel to them, but that's not something that the committee is looking for. So I don't want to discourage anyone who might not want to incorporate travel into their sabbaticals. But I just wanted to say that because, excuse me, my sabbatical involved a little bit of domestic travel. But before I talk about my project, I want to just give a personal connection to just the idea of a sabbatical, because it was a sabbatical that brought me to California in 2001. I had recently graduated from graduate school, and I was applying for jobs. And as a young person with, excuse me, just out of graduate school, you're sort of looking for anything you can get. And a position came up at Yuba College as a long-term temporary. It was a position for a year, and the professor was taking a year sabbatical to basically retrain to learn digital technology. At that time, photography professors were kind of talking about this idea of we're going to be going digital. And so I took over his classes for a year. And so my career as a professor started with this kind of seed of what a sabbatical was. I saw, because in 2001, 9/11 happened, and the person that I was taking over for travel photography was a big part of his job. And so he was grounded for a large part of the year and really became a mentor to me. And so I was able to really start my career off with the seed of how important a sabbatical was to your career and to how you were progressing along, professionally within the knowledge you have of your discipline. And so I always knew that I wanted to take a sabbatical. It just took me a really long time to find a full-time position. And then I had to achieve tenure. So it was many, many years later. It wasn't until 2017 that I was able to take my Type A sabbatical. And in my sabbatical, I'm from Selma, Alabama. And when I first moved to California, I was a little embarrassed to tell people where I was from. And as I lived here longer, and as I kind of became more secure in, myself, I also became more interested in my own history and the history of where I'm from. that kind of coincided with Patty Faulkner and I. We developed a photo history class that we were teaching. And as part of that class, we were learning historic processes, and historic photographic processes were something that I had always concentrated on. The undergraduate school where I went, that was the concentration in their photography program, was historic and alternative processes. But I wanted a deeper understanding of them. And when we started teaching this class, we took workshops to learn these processes. But these were surface level workshops that we took that just taught us the basics. But over the years, I took those basics and I developed, kept developing and kept practicing. But I felt like I needed some time to really dive deep into these processes. And so I was looking for a way that I could combine perhaps studying my my hometown to understand that a little bit more, and how I could pull these techniques that I use in my work together. And I thought about it for years and years and years and years. And I was in I don't know if it was a professional development workshop or if it was something that was put on by the college, and Selma came up. And I thought, gosh, you know, I'm the one person here on this campus that probably has the most knowledge of this place. And it was kind of a strange sort of experience being in California and hearing people talk about where I was from, and me thinking, you know, I really think I need to kind of understand this a little bit more. And it lit a kind of a spark in me to want to really study my my hometown in a way that connected to my discipline. And so I thought, you know, around this time too, I was also getting very burned out. I love teaching and I put everything into it each semester. And I sort of, you know, come to the end of the semester just really exhausted. And I'm sure everybody here in this room can understand that when you put everything into it, you don't leave a lot for other things, you know, your research, or in the case of artists, for work that we do. We teach so much, we don't have a lot of time for our own personal passion projects. And so I thought, you know, if I were to be able to go back to my hometown and photograph residents there and interview them, utilizing this historic process, which was the wet plate collodion process, I'd be able to learn more about myself. I'd be able to learn more about this process that I use within my courses, but I'd also be able to learn more about my hometown and ultimately create a body of work that would educate other people about this, you know, where I'm from, or this complicated place that I'm from. And I have to say, I share Leslie's sentiments. My sabbatical was enlightening. It was rejuvenating. It was life-changing. And it not only was able to benefit me, but I was able to benefit my community in ways that I really never expected to be able to do that. While I was there, I had to, I was not on social media before, so I had to create a social media page, because that's how I studied my hometown. That's how people communicate with each other. So I had to learn a new language of, you know, communicating with people. What I also did was I talked to people at other colleges that had taken sabbaticals, not just here. So I had, in my journey, before I was full-time, I had been a sabbatical replacement at 2 different colleges, at Sierra and at Yuba. And I spoke to both of those professors and I talked to them about what they did. And they both talked about how it was important to structure your day as if you were at work, and to plan, to record everything that you did. And so, like Leslie, I created a blog. And I would post to that blog 2, 3, sometimes 4 times a week, and at least weekly. But it was a good way for me, once I wrote my report, for me to be able to go back, because all of the process was there. Everything, my struggles were there. I approached, so after speaking to people, what I did was I approached this with a SMART goal system. I wanted to make sure that I was specific in what I was approaching, that everything had, that it was measurable, that it was relevant, that it was time bound. I had many different, I had well-laid plans, and those kind of flew out the window when I got home, or when I got back to where I was going to be working. But my project involved me packing up a whole lot of, chemistry, my camera, hauling it all the way across the country in a car. And so what I did too was I contacted photographers along the way. So everywhere that we stopped, my husband went with me for this project, and everywhere we stopped on the way, I talked to photographers who were working in my field, doing the same thing that I was doing. And so I was researching along the way, and then all the way back, I did the same thing. So for me, it was like a knowledge quest. It was an engagement in my roots. It was an engagement in the processes that feed me artistically. And it was a real pursuit of rejuvenation, because I had reached a point where it wasn't that I was unhappy teaching, but I was having a hard time getting excited about the work. And so doing this allowed me to reconnect, allowed me to, for me, I was going back to an area where I had family who could help support me while I was there. I couldn't believe it. I was in my 40s living at home with my father. but it was really nice because I had a community that was supportive. And so what I would say is that whatever you're planning to do, make sure that the people that are around you are going to be supportive of this. I could not have done this if I didn't have the support of my coworkers, who were, willing to kind of take on things as I left. But then also, once I was working, to have people that would honor and respect what I was doing, and to support that, and to make sure that what they were doing was helpful and not hurtful to me. I think that's very important, because I think sometimes folks think like, oh, this is time off. I worked harder on my sabbatical than I have. Well, I was going to say that I've worked teaching, but these past 2 years, that flies out the window. But when I had taken my sabbatical, I worked harder at that every day than I ever had worked, teaching during a normal work day, because we get into this routine where, we know what we're doing. We can kind of go in and we have our plan A and our plan B in our mind. But when you're going into an unknown territory, things happen. And so I had, and Patty gave me this best piece of advice. But my first year teaching at CRC, something happened and I wasn't able to complete the lesson I wanted to do. And I asked Patty, I was like, what am I supposed to do? And she goes, well, what was your plan B? And I was like, oh, I didn't have a plan B. She's like, you got to have a plan B. You need to have a plan C, maybe a plan D. And so I went into it with I had a very detailed plan, and I'd be happy to share my proposal with anybody, my report with anybody. I can send you pictures. I kept an agenda while I was there where I would write down everything every day. But I wanted to make sure that I was able to pivot if I needed to, which I did quite a few times. And it's something, you're going into the unexpected, but as long as you're prepared. And when I'd have a speed bump, I think I contacted, Patty was the chair at the time, and I think I contacted her at the time to say, look, this is, I've had to pivot a little bit. It's going this way instead of that way. Is this okay? And that's another thing that I wanted to point out is if anything does happen and things kind of go awry, communication and transparency with the committee is very important. I was serving on the committee when we went remote during the pandemic, and there were people who were working on their sabbaticals at that time. And it was the openness and the transparency during that time that allowed them to be able to finish up, although not in the way that they imagined, but to be able to do it. So I'd be happy to share my experiences with anybody, and just if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you, Leslie and Catherine, for sharing your passion and your journey through your sabbatical. We are very
Can I say what? I'm sorry. You know what? I want to say one thing. What I wanted to say was, I was one of those people that applied at a time when there were a lot of people that were applying and there wasn't much time to give. And I'm going to back up a little bit. I've applied for type Bs before and for small projects, and I've gotten those. And those have been very beneficial to me. And I think that it's important for me to have done that first and to have gone through that experience of applying for the type B before I ever went to a type A. When I applied for the type A, there were a lot of people. I think there were 5 applicants that were applying for type As. And so my proposal, while it was approved, was not ranked. And so the letter that I got was what Patty was talking about. It was hard to read. It was confusing because I didn't understand, like, oh my goodness, you didn't like what I did. But it was really because there were so many really great proposals that were in the room and mine didn't get ranked. Now, being who I am, I wasn't going to let that deter me. So I would have applied 10 times until I got it. I mean, I just would have done it over and over and over again. But I applied again, and that allowed me, I would say it was a blessing in disguise, because it allowed me to go back and rethink about the way I wanted to approach the project. I changed some things, and I came back, even though I felt like I went in the first time with a well-formulated idea, I went back with a little bit of a different determination, and I think I had a little bit more of a focused idea about what I wanted to do. And when I went back the second time, I was awarded the sabbatical the second time. So don't give up. And I'm going to apply again one day.
Awesome. Yay. Thanks so much for Leslie, Catherine, for sharing your journey and experience on your sabbatical with us. And your insight was super helpful for everybody. So thank you for sharing. And we also have one more person that would like to share. We have Georgine Hodgkinson. She's been awarded sabbatical, I believe, a few times. So she can share about her journey briefly.
Great. So thanks so much for the invitation to share. I just want to echo the encouragement that I heard from my colleagues. I think that applying for a sabbatical is a really important thing for all of us to do over the tenure of a long teaching career. I've had multiple type Bs, and I've actually had 2 type As. My first type A, I was studying, I teach in the communication studies department. I teach interpersonal communication, and I'm really interested in issues of identity construction. So my first sabbatical was sort of connected to that theme. I went to India, I lived in ashrams for a semester, and I interviewed Westerners who were went all this way to live in ashrams and have spiritual experiences. And I was really interested in exploring the question of why Westerners would go so far to cultivate their own spiritual identity and have experiences. So that was my first sabbatical. My second sabbatical was about 8 years later. And I was really, had gotten involved with students in my classroom who'd been formerly incarcerated and were really struggling in lots of ways. And there wasn't a program on our campus for formerly incarcerated people. So I wrote a sabbatical that took me throughout California, going to different community colleges to interview people and to understand both programs that existed to support formerly incarcerated students. And also I was interested in really exploring the topic of institutionalized racism in the criminal justice system as a system impacted person myself. So it was a really interesting topic to me. So those are my 2 type A's. I want to encourage you to do it. I think that the application process does take time and energy to do, but it really is life-changing. And for me, it's also been job-changing, because now I serve as the program coordinator for the program that I was able to put together during my sabbatical. So I think that it has all sorts of opportunities, both personal and professional. And I hope, if you haven't done it, that you'll give yourself the chance to try for one, because it's a wonderful experience professionally. Okay, I was told to be really short, so I'll stop so we can have Q&A.
Great. Thanks, Georgine. Thanks for sharing.
Mun, can I mention one thing? So I think one thing that we need to also be aware of is, and Anastasia and Mun, maybe you and Patty, you can't make money off of the things that you create during this time. So that needs to be something that I think is something that we talk about, because I know that that's been an issue in the past. I know for me, I created a body of work of art, and I have been approached to sell that work, and I don't do that, because the body of work that I created was created while I was working for CRC. So while CRC doesn't own the work that I make, I'm not going to profit off of that artwork. Or let's say if you wrote a book or did something like that, there's a little bit of an issue with that. So I want to make sure that everybody's aware of that, that you're not doing something that you can profit off of in the end.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks for bringing that up. Because yeah, that brings a bunch of logistical issues with that, profiting off it. So anyways, yeah, everyone, thank you so much for sharing about your sabbatical experience. Now we'd like to move up to some Q&As. I'm sure we have a lot of questions that would like to be asked. So you can feel free to unmute your mics, and if you want to ask a question, or you could write in the chat.
Mun, could I just, can I jump in briefly? Hopefully it'll take me 30 seconds. Because folks are asking like where to find the reports. And I know that it's super hidden. Can I do a screen share real quick to show where to find those? If you all don't mind, because it is totally hidden, right? It's almost like we don't want you to find them. No, I'm kidding. Okay. Can everyone see? I have the CRC homepage up. Can everyone see that so far? Yeah. Okay. Boy. Okay. So usually we want to go to the employee side of things, right? So this is where we are. You go to governance, academic senate. Good so far. Everyone sees that academic senate. Yes. Okay. We'll click on that. And when you scroll to the bottom where it says agenda and minutes, if you click on this for academic senate, it will take you then, it'll open board docs, which looks like this. And way up here, can you see way up in the corner, there's this little temple, this little guy right here, little temple, click on the caret, and it'll say professional, oh, sorry, my screen's in the way, I gotta move that. Okay, it'll say professional standards. So click on that. So then that's where you get to our meetings and stuff and agendas, and you'll see it's done by year. And so like you can see, for example, it'll say professional standards meeting and fall 2020 sabbatical reports. You can go to other years and it'll have the same thing listed. So for example, the May 1st meeting, if you click on view agenda, here's Georgine's synopsis, and then her report is here. This is not a perfect system by any means, but when the colleges decided to revamp their websites, we lost the ability to directly update our website. And so now we have to do it through, there's a form, and if any of you have had to update websites, you know how it's pretty cumbersome. So this is the way, so like you can go into any of our meetings for the last few years and it will show you. So here's Leslie's type B that she had. Also Miriam's from ECE, and then James Frazee, and the reports, you can download them, it's listed at the bottom. So it's not super intuitive to find, and that is something that we will put on our website to alert people how to get there. It's just not super pretty right now. So, and you can always let me know, and that's, yeah, so that's where it is.